Hi everyone, welcome back to WYP. I'm Razak. I'll get it right this time. I'm saying my own name. Okay, I'm Razak. Yeah, I've got the legend Mayowa with me. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
Well, this is a big one. I can't lie. Mayowa does a few stuff with Stoppage Time TV, and you also do some stuff with Versus as well. So you write a lot of articles about really important matters, and that's one of the many reasons that I wanted to get you on here. So first question: who are you? Background. Give us a brief outline of who you are at the moment. Obviously, I said what you were doing, but in terms of what you're doing at the moment and what you have done.
Who am I? It's an interesting question. I guess to different people, I'm probably different things. To a lot of people, probably a content creator. To some, I'm a family man. To some, I'm a new father. I'm a sibling.
Congrats on that.
I'm many things too. No, I appreciate it. But essentially, I define myself as a conversationalist. So I write, but I do podcasts. I produce, I curate, I do many different things within the creative space. But the way I see it is I do loads of different things to create conversation, whether it's through digital or paper format. So I usually tie that up and say I'm a conversationalist. I always want to do stuff where I want to imagine that I'm having a conversation with the person that's receiving it. Yeah. And that's essentially sort of me in everyday life, really. I always want to kind of understand what people's thoughts are and have conversations about that, and not only get advanced learning from myself, but learn from people's different experiences. So that's who I am in a nutshell.
Tell us a bit about your journey. So how you got to where you are at the moment. So what did you go to school? Did you go uni? What did you do? That sort of stuff.
So my journey is it's quite an interesting one. So I mean, if you rewind 5-6 years, this isn't probably the path people would have seen for me. Although, if you had told them that this would be the path, they would say, "Yeah, this makes total sense." And I say that to say this: I've always played football. I've always had conversations. So my sort of generation growing up, I'm not that much older than you, but it was Facebook was the thing. It was Bieber, and it was Facebook. So a lot of my sort of commentary around football and discussing football was like long Facebook statuses, everything. It was a part of my life when I was getting older, and I was like, I don't really like social media, so I played a lot of football. I didn't really get involved in the early sort of joining on Instagram, joining on Twitter, exploding and everything. But no matter where I was, I would conversate about football. So that could be the barber shop, that would be church, that would be with friends and colleagues. No matter where I was, everyone knew that like he played football, he lived and breathed football, he spoke about football, he taught life lessons through football, he did this and did that. So that was always part of me. And essentially, I went off to uni to study oil, gas, and energy management, because I've always been someone that, not deliberately, but I always like seeking a different path for myself. So if everyone was sort of trying to go into be like medicine or accountancy and everything like that, I was like, okay, but what could I do which was different? And at the time, I looked at the energy industry and I thought, you know what, this is an industry in terms of renewable energy eventually that will be coming. It'll be the revolution. We're all going to save the world. We're going to all have Teslas and everything. So I kind of did a degree that allowed me to sort of go through that lane. And for 3 years plus placement, I was doing this uni degree. I enjoyed it, but obviously football was always there. So I was coaching at academies up in the Midlands. I was active in football. I was doing like 3 or 4 coaching jobs whilst doing my degree and everything. Finished my degree, got my first class, left Midlands, came back. But the renewable energy industry and the oil industry in this country was finished because of all government legislation. So I was like, oh, okay, cool. What am I going to go into if there's no industry and I don't really want to move abroad right now? So I did a grad scheme at Eurostar, which is the rail company. But my grad scheme, the reason why I did that is because it allowed me to be well-rounded. So I did stuff like, which was HR, I worked in a depot, I did like branding stuff, I did different elements. So I did that. Like during my time doing that, I started a podcast with some friends, and like I was kind of exploring football content a bit more. And I'm not a heavy consumer of basketball, but from what I know of American culture and what I saw, there was this sort of space over there that existed where popular culture and sport coexisted. So it wasn't foreign to see the biggest NBA stars with musicians. It wasn't odd to see those worlds colliding. In the UK, that wasn't really the thing.
Yeah.
And actually, when you look at America, you kind of see things that are going to happen in 3 or 4 days' time. Podcasting was one of them. And it was kind of like, oh, why can't we have that stuff here? So we started this podcast where essentially we spoke the way we wanted to speak and we did things the way we wanted to do, me and my friends. Eventually, then started stoppage time. And then eventually I started writing as well, because growing up, I wrote loads of different things, but I thought, you know what, I can write about something I'm passionate about. And that led to a situation where I had stoppage time, I had my other podcast, I was writing, I was doing other things and everything. And you're balancing that on top of a quite tasking job as well. Then what then happened was I was writing for Versus, like freelance, because I reached out to them. Versus were kind of like groundbreaking. They're trying to do things differently. I'm doing stoppage time. And people start to know what you're doing more and everything. But for me, it was sort of, I just enjoy creating content. I enjoy doing these things which are different. So for instance, I would write a piece about Don Strapsy's 10 best football bars, which was sort of traditional journalism or anything. It was sort of relevant to our community, where we're from, how we talk.
I feel like you have good self-awareness. How much does self-awareness play into what you do? Or how have you seen, let me change the question actually. How have you seen your self-awareness change over the last few years?
It's a really good question. I feel like I've always been self-aware of what's around me, but what's around others as well, and around kind of the bigger sphere of who we are, where we are. But definitely having my little boy, it kind of adds another switch onto you, because if I'm being truthfully honest, in the situation I was in where the pandemic came, you're on furlough, you're at home, like you're not working, you then have to look at a situation and say, okay, you know what, if I don't take a jump now, when will I be able to do that? And I feel like to me, there was a certain bit of accountability, which was like, you know what, in a few years' time, will I be able to tell my little boy that, you know what, I actually went after my dreams? Will I be able to have the other conversation? Will I say, you know what, I didn't do this? And that was kind of the fuel that pushed me to say, no, listen, let's get it cracking. Let's try and make something out of this.
Tell us a bit about how, your thoughts on that, on standing up against things that should be stood up against, and celebrating things that should be celebrated.
For me personally, like if we go back to my beliefs and values, part of my deep beliefs and values is that if we don't help each other, who will help us? Like if we have to state how facts are facts, when you are the minority, there is less of you naturally. And we're in a situation where in a lot of fields, we are always going to be the minority. And what happens because of that is a lot of the time we feel like because there's only a few of us, only 1 or 2 of us can get certain spots. And actually what that brings is not competition, because competition I believe is healthy, but it brings this sort of, oh, I've got to withhold you because I need to get that. And it's always been a sort of culture that, for me anyway, I don't agree with. I feel like with hard work and, building stuff, we can always be in positions where everyone can move forward. But I just feel like unless people take action of what they see, nothing's ever going to change. And a good example of that is I see so many people doing positive things. And I know that people can not only be influenced by that, but people can learn from it. A lot of the stuff I've learned isn't from people that I kind of know. I see stuff online, or I see someone, a friend of a friend that's done something. And it's like, you know what, that's really dope. If that person can do that, that means everyone else can. Like everyone is essentially the same person. So that's why, like, when I see people win, like I celebrate like it's my own, because at the end of the day, you may be helping people through your win that look like that talk like me, that come from where I'm from. But
Mm.
you open a door and going through a door, 10 people might go through. I'll tell you a funny story. So I went to this sixth form, right? Well, I went to secondary school in Peckham, called St. Thomas Apostle. And this school, right, all boys school. And I believe the year that we finished, our pass percentage was probably about 33%, if I remember correctly. I may be quoting that wrong, but it was quite low. It was like below national averages, which is like 78%. And I managed to get into a really good sixth form. And I remember when I got to that sixth form, when I even went for the open days, like, because of where I was coming from, stuff like was said to me, stuff like, oh, you need to make sure you get A in English, because if you don't, we're not letting you in. Or on the opening assembly and everything, they were like, oh, welcome to all the people that are returning, welcome to the people from X, Y, and Z school, and welcome to the people from schools that you wouldn't expect to be here. And for me, it was kind of like, I take stuff like that quite personally, not only because I'm competitive, because it's like, okay, basically you're judging me not based on my own merit, but based on the merit of things that stand. And even that is wrong, because you don't know the individuals that come through that. So lo and behold, whilst I was in sixth form, I was doing a lot of stuff with government, essentially, because I was on the board of a charity, the Challenge NCS, National Citizen Service, which national get on the board for that. So essentially, I was at sixth form, being allowed to leave sixth form to go down in street to do all of this stuff. But so to the sixth form, it looked like, right, this guy's like doing some crazy stuff and everything. Like, but he's come from there. How is this possible? Like, oh my gosh. And by the time I left that sixth form, they were then accepting, instead of just one person from my secondary school, they were accepting 20, 30 people from that secondary school, because it was like, oh, then there must be more people like him. That I'm not saying that to big myself up, but I'm saying that that sort of story is a representation of so many people that, because of one thing or another, they get written off. But they then do something, or someone then talks about what they've done, and someone looks at that and says, okay, you know what, maybe I've got this perception wrong. Maybe I need to start looking at people like that and trusting them with opportunities and everything. So that's why loads of good things I see, I try to push out there. Any opportunity that I see that might be worth someone else, I call it, I try to break bread with like people around me as much as possible, because at the end of the day, you can't do every single opportunity that comes to you. It's impossible. Like, even if you think you can, you can't. You actually can't. And at the same time, what do you benefit from doing everything yourself and everyone around you can't grasp onto things? And what do you get from not celebrating the success of people around you? Like, I've never not understood that. So that's why I will celebrate people's wins. I will give information to people. And of course, not everyone has got a good heart. Some people misuse that. Some people mistreat that. Some people want to repay you back with that energy. But at the same time, I've come to learn that just because people don't repay you back for the same energy doesn't mean that you're not going to get repaid in different other ways. I'm a firm believer that through faith and everything, a lot of the goodwill that I've been fortunate through my career, my path, has come from some of the goodwill that I've actually done unto people.
Have you sort of grasped the idea of the influence you have as a content creator, as someone who works within media? Because for me personally, when I look at sort of content creators, people that are out there in the spotlight, that have a really good following, and people that are in the media doing journalism, people that are interacting with their followers, with the people that are following their work. Do you sort of understand that, like, if I say something, it holds weight?
I'll answer it, but I guess I'll give it this sort of preface just so it gives context to my answer. So there's a quote that's been going around for most of this year, right? And it's people saying stuff like, footballers should just stick to football. And I don't believe in that quote, because the way I see it is, footballers are influences onto the hundreds of millions that follow them. Because if you're in love with the team, you're in love with the players, you're in love with everything they do. And you don't have to look any further than Marcus Rashford and see what he's done this year and how he has influenced the whole country to like change. He's battled the government. He's made people think, you know what, we have got issues here and everything. and that's a man in his young 20s. That's someone with a massive following, right?
Yeah.
So I believe that on that scale, people watch your every single move because they're influenced by what you do, they're influenced by what you say. So in that regard, you can't tell a man to stick to just football, because if he just stuck to football, we wouldn't be battling football poverty in this country. Now, where I'm not Rashford, I'm not anything like that, but where that then kind of I will flip that is, I'm in a situation now where I understand that influence that he has. I understand the positive of what him, Reece James, and so many other footballers, even if it's not just about that or that topic, just talking about Black Lives Matter and all that, and the influence that voices have. I don't have that influence, but what I can try to do is speak on the narrative or discuss it and say how this is a good thing for change, or how football is being used for change, and how people need to acknowledge what's going on. Therefore, through the stuff I put out with verses, that's where there will be influence, if you understand where I'm coming from.
Because for me, I see the whole, I spoke about it before we came on, the whole Ozil situation. Really, I don't want to get into it too much in it, but it pisses me off that there's something, someone stood up against something so bad, and now you're telling me I can't go about my daily business, I can't do what I want to do just because I stood up against it. You don't want to stand by me for that. Don't even stand by me, just don't say anything. But instead, the whole club went against what he was going for. So I think that's what people are scared of. Would you agree? Would you agree that, obviously you may obviously say, oh, I'm not I don't have that big of a following, but as long as you got a little following, whether it be 50 or 500 or 500,000, if you've got some sort of following that, there's one or two people watching that actually look at your content and get influenced, surely that's influence in itself. So like standing up for what's right in whatever position you are, whatever following you have, that is what is key. That's what, for me, that's how I look at it. When Ozil stood up against like my ratings from shot, I liked him as a player. I liked him but I wouldn't say he was my favorite, but he was definitely my favorite Arsenal player at the time. But now, when people come to me, who's your favorite? Ozil, without a shadow of a doubt, just because for me, greatness isn't achieved on the pitch; it's achieved off it. But when someone like that is standing up for what's right, standing up for what's going on in the world, and then people condemning it, that's what scares people. Do you think people, not to say at Ozil's level, but let's say at a bit of a smaller level, but still they've got a very good influence within their community? Would you say that they're scared of being condemned of those things and sort of cast aside? So you know what, we don't. So it's like Jeremy Corbyn as well.
Yeah. Do you know what's that's actually really good. A good example, Jeremy Corbyn. Do you know what the issue is with life? It's almost damned if you do, damned if you don't. That's the brute to honesty. If you stand up for something, people might hail you up and be like, you know what, you did the right thing. There's going to be people that said, you know what, why are you doing this? Oh, we're taking this away from you, taking that away from you. If you don't stand up for what's right, people are going to be like, you had a platform, you could have said something. At the same time, some people are going to be like, oh yeah, no, it's good you didn't say anything, because you know what, you're not in a place to say, or you should stick to football. So in life, there's always going to be kind of like the both sides of your decisions. Me as a person, I'm a believer that if everyone did like a little, you get a massive impact. If you had 10 people and they all did one action, you get a big impact. It's not about one person doing one big thing, because at the end of the day, that can help. But if everyone did their own individual small part, you would have a massive thing. And that doesn't happen enough. So that's one part. The other part of it, in terms of how everything stands, is I feel like what happens, especially now, is people don't understand, and it goes back to what we were saying earlier about purpose. So everyone's role in everything is different. And I'll give this as an example, right? So during a lot of the Black Lives Matter movement and everything that happened in terms of football, you had some players who thought it was their role to come out and speak and be vocal. You had some players that didn't come out and speak, but they were in the offices, in these rooms, having the conversations to make sure that things were done and done properly. The difference is one may be seen to the naked eye, one may not, but the impact of both is really strong. However, key thing there is, in both situations, both parties, A and B, did what was right. Turning your eye, a blind eye, to what's not right for me, that is something that's like each to their own, but it's like, okay, but you have to be sure that if you're doing that, you can then sleep at night. And that's why you mentioned Ozil. That's why I have so much respect for it, because he stood to lose a lot by doing that. He's lost a lot. He may still even lose more. But what he said was his beliefs and his core values exceeded anything that he could be given or anything that was taken away from him. And that if he didn't do right, he wouldn't have been able to live with that. Same thing with Griezmann, in the sense that when it came to, he spoke about it recently with the sponsor. And again, that comes back to what I said about person A, person B. Ozil came out and condemned his club's actions. Griezmann said in his one, he wasn't condemning his club, but it was like, you know what? I don't want to be associated with this because I know that this is going on. So it's two different things in terms of the magnitude, but they're both trying to do the same thing and say, you know what? My spirit doesn't sit right with this. I need to address it so that people can know that there's something wrong here. And it's now up to that momentum to then be picked up, and then whoever wants to take the fight in that circumstance to move that forward.
Yeah, understandable. I like it. Because I have this conversation a lot with friends that, and you know, for me, the greatest athlete there ever was is Muhammad Ali. Not because I don't know much about boxing, I don't know about his record, I don't know about anything like that, but what he stood for, what he put on the line, and how much he cared for what he put on the line was very minimal. Like, he didn't care. He was like, you know what? I see something that I don't like. I'm not doing it, or I won't stand for it, or I'll stand against that. And he was very active in that regard. It's just, what does it take for me? I think maybe the frustration is a lack of understanding in actually what it takes to be in that situation. I think it does take a certain amount of intelligence on what you need to know. I think Muhammad Ali, even Mesut Ozil, all these guys sort of are intelligent in their self, and they know their principles and values and what they believe in, and they understood the fact that, you know what, I know I'm gonna get, battered for this, but the questions that I get, the battering that I get, I'm ready for it because I know what I stand for and what I don't. I think more often than not, I think majority of us, we feel like we may know our principles and values, but then if someone was to come and tell you what is it, we would, struggle to answer. So a really interesting conversation. And, one of the reasons why I had to get you on here, just because the stuff you do at Versus is really, really powerful. You speak about the likes of Rashford and the likes of, even standing up for women's football, and it's proper good to see. So, last question that I'm gonna say, just to round up what we've been talking about and what we've been saying. What would you sort of advise for all the journalists out there and all the content creators out there that are wanting to do what advice would you give them in that regard, in terms of how they could go about doing more purposeful behavior, more purposeful content, more purposeful?
It's a good question, man. And the honest answer to it is the dynamic of the space we're in is changing. So for so long, it was sort of national broadcaster, radio, and then it was sort of independent. The worlds can coexist now, and you've got people that are doing independent almost at broadcaster level. So if you believe in something, don't be afraid to speak about it. If you can't find the sort of corporate or broadcaster lens to channel that through, you can do it off your own back now. We're in a society where it's easier now than ever to sort of get your platform out there. Literally, all you have to do is almost record. You set up your Spotify and SoundCloud. You might have to pay along $7.99, but you can pitch it through, and you can educate an audience through that. And it's not about feeling like you need to try and educate the masses. If you've got something integral and important to say, and you believe that it can cause change, you could say it to 50 people. If that 50 people speak to another 50 people individually, you're really changing the narrative through that sort of decision you've taken. So more than ever as well, like, create, just try things. Like, if something doesn't work, then so be it. At least you know that, you know what, I tried. And like I said, I don't have like a formal qualification as a journalist and everything. Now more than ever, you can almost create your own lanes to then begin this journey. So yeah, just literally try, be courageous, ask questions from people, and just prosper, really. But do it within what you feel is right for you and what you believe your purpose is.
Yeah, I agree. I like the part where it almost building a portfolio for yourself online, and when you go to want to sort of take up an opportunity, just refer to your portfolio. I've done this amount of work. I've done this there. I've done this. And if they question your experience, say, I've built a year's portfolio. And this goes for football as well. Like, I see it as well with a lot of scouts online now. They're doing a lot of scouting reports and just slapping it online. And the more they do it, the more of a foundation they're sitting on. And then when they go into that interview, they feel much more powerful with the content that they've got in their arsenal. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time. I appreciate the knowledge you've given out, and all the good stuff, the good insight you've given as well. Really, really powerful stuff. I hope that the media journalists out there, all the content creators, really see what you're doing and push on and really feel inspired by what you do. And because I'm inspired by what you do. So thank you for today, man.
I appreciate that a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you. And like I said to you before, like, massive shout out to you for the platform and association you've built, and for doing it as well, because a lot of people have an idea, but making an idea come to life, not everyone goes and does that. A lot of people think, what if I did this? And they don't do it for 5 or 10 years. Like, you've actually done it, and what you're doing is trying to give back and help people. Not everyone makes something to help others. A lot of the time, the decisions we make tend to be self-serving. So massive shout out, respect to you. And I know the platform's going to continue growing, and it's going to continue having an impact, which is the most important thing. So yeah, big up to you, man.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your words. That's it from us. Hope you guys have enjoyed. Hope you guys have taken away something. I'm sure you have. And we'll see you in the next video. See you later.